Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from the Wide Left Substack. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, I'm not entirely sure what the Commanders were hoping for this evening, but I'm fairly confident they are going to want to nail Marcus Mariota's feet to the ground before he tries to leap over a defender this year.
That was crazy. Like, surely he had a thought in his mind when he did that. And, you know, that requires us to ask, what thought? I must know. Please print it out and mail it to me. I would love to have that. How could you possibly think that that was in your universe of possibilities? That's crazy that he did that.
You are the number 2 quarterback. The most important thing that the number 2 quarterback can do is not get hurt. Is to not become the quarterback in IR.
Are you saying something, James?
Boy, we will be in a moment. But that's the most important thing you can do. Like, not giving the game away, not giving the ball, fine. But, like, staying healthy is it's remarkably important when you are the number 2 quarterback. Kudos for ending the game on both of your feet, but you were really trying there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's we don't have a conventional game recap this episode because we don't have a conventional game to recap. We will be doing that in just a moment. Before we do, thank you so much for listening to Norse Code. If you enjoy the show and would like to help us out financially, there's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can go over to patreon.com/NorseCode for $3.50 a month, or a little less for the year subscription. You get access to things like the Discord, the bonus episodes, all of that. We'll be putting out another bonus episode here in just a couple days. Special thank you to Jim Cran for signing up over on Patreon. Thank you so much. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com for any number of wonderful pieces of Norse Code merchandise, whether it is the baby onesie, the t-shirt, the hats, the shower curtains, all of that is available over at norsecode.threadless.com. And it's just about the Christmas season, so just want to remind everyone that the wreath line of shirts and everything else is available over at norsecode.threadless.com. 'Tis the season, Arif. 'Tis the season.
I have to come up with, because I've been wearing that same sweater 3 ugly sweater parties in a row, and I feel like the gimmick is about to wear thin. So I need to find an alternate solution at some point. But it was such a lock for like 3 different years, and it was nice to be able to miss 2 years because of the pandemic. So it was like it wasn't fresh in people's minds. But yeah, I got to figure something out.
Yeah, we'll. We may have to send a couple of dollars somewhere and figure something, unleash another terror upon the world. Speaking of which, I absolutely flat out refused to record on Thursday night. Normally, when the Vikings have a special game on a Thursday night or a Sunday night or even a Monday night, we record immediately afterwards. And I flat out refused, I think by halftime.
Yeah,
by halftime.
I right before that, I texted James or G-chatted. I don't know why we use G-chat for all of our business. But I texted James and I was like, hey, so I've got some schedule issues that we're going to have to work around if we record tonight. I got to do the live postcast on the Locked On Network, which is pretty unusual. Typically don't have to do that. And then also I obviously have to write the thing. And he was like, don't worry about that. I do not care. I was like, oh, okay.
Nope, we're not doing it. I think it was, what was it? Yeah, I was like, nope, I don't care. Let's do something better with our lives than recap this crap.
That was it, yeah.
I'm done. I'm out. I want nothing to do with this game. Because what all was I going to do? Like, normally I can pull out something on a recap and be fine. This particular recap was just going to be me yelling into a microphone. And I had to, like, save my voice for the next day when I was announcing and the weekend. So, like, this is not worth it.
Yeah, as soon as you have, like, a shadow of a sliver of a reason not to, you take it at that point.
Yeah, it's like, look, if I'm going to, like, watch Josh Freeman 2.0, the original Josh Freeman episode never aired, and Josh Freeman 2.0 is
that's right.
No, in the like storied history of the show, no. I'm not going to do that. It was awful. It was watching a man who was incredibly injured continually stay out there and continue to get hurt. It was bad on the offensive side of the ball. It was bad on the defensive side of the ball. There were decisions that were made that were clearly Toradol like influenced. Like, it's not good. And instead of actually going over, hey, Arif, how'd the defense do? Hey, Arif, what's going on at running back? Is Aaron Jones back? Doesn't look like he's back. No. Instead of doing any of that, we're going to talk about Carson Wentz, hopefully for the last time this year, because Carson Wentz is now on IR. He is expected to be out for the rest of the season. He is having shoulder surgery on his non-throwing shoulder. The shoulder that we have known was hurt, but not hurt for the past couple of weeks. And I guess the only place I want to start, oddly enough, is from a Luke Braun question, which good. I know, but Luke wrote this in, and instead of going to the mailbag, I wanted to bring it up right away. It says, what moral obligation, if any, do teams have when it comes to players playing through injuries and pain? And where does it lie on a spectrum between, quote, your shoulder is fine, Carson, and, quote, take as much time on that ankle as you need, JJ? Like, was this incredibly cruel to Carson Wentz? Was it not? Did God have a plan for Arif after all?
I will say one good thing about Luke's question, which is that it does center the protagonist of reality, me, and the lessons that this escapade has taught me, right? Like, Carson Wentz's shoulder might be pulled pork, but what did Arif learn from this? When Arif is on the screen, the other character should be asking, where is Arif?
Exactly. Arif is Poochie. This is the lost episode. But the question remains,
right?
When is a player staying out there being North Dakota tough? When is it the responsibility of the coach, of everyone else on the team, to sit him down and go, dude, enough. Just stay down.
So there's a couple of things here. First, I want to get into the extent of his injury. So in addition to having a labrum injury, which, correct me if I'm wrong, doctor people, because I actually did not look this up right before we did the show. I was just like, I know labrums. It's the ligature that kind of keeps the shoulder, it keeps the shoulder joint like isolated from everything else around it. So you can like if you tear the labrum, it essentially like pops the vacuum of that area. But it's, it's important. It's very painful to have it torn. People do play through labrum injuries, but usually they don't. And obviously the degree of the tear matters quite a lot. Alyssa Thomas famously played through, a WNBA player played through labrum injuries multiple years in a row, because the nature of playing women's basketball is that there really isn't an off season, and not like the NFL, there is no off season, because that's only true for like people who cover the sport. But no, you're like playing overseas and stuff, like you have to make money. So she just like didn't, which is crazy. But degrees of injury kind of matter here. But in addition to that, there's also like a fracture in the bone that holds the joint, which is nuts to me. And this was, I believe, the initial injury that he had suffered Was it against? It was against the Browns, right? Yeah, it was against the Browns. I was like, it was abroad somewhere, one of those two games. But it was like the initial injury, and it's like that's why Max Proser has a snap this year. And so, in addition to having a labrum tear, which I recall the Vikings were able to get Anthony Harris, if you remember him. A guy that was generally projected to be a fourth round guy. They got him in undrafted free agency because of a labrum tear. It can be pretty significant and serious. And my understanding is that it is remarkably painful. And I bet it's really painful if you repeatedly take a hammer to it, which is what the Vikings had him go through. But on top of all of that, he also had a fracture in the bone that holds the joint, right? And so I think it was the dislocation process fractured the bone or something like that. Wild situation. So yeah, that is, that's a lot. So obviously he's playing through a ton of injuries, a ton of pain, extraordinary amount of pain. And I don't doubt for a second that the Vikings reached whatever limit they thought was medically appropriate and probably and then some, in terms of Toradol or other painkillers. And when a pain is so broad and intense that it is going through, God's best painkillers, right? That is really significant to me. So, do we expect players to play through pain? Yeah. Do we expect them to play through injury? Yeah. I mean, we don't actually hear about it all that often for players who are not star athletes, but this does happen all the time. Remember, John Sullivan, I believe, played his first 2 years, I want to say, maybe just the first year, as a starter at center with the Vikings with a real back injury. And he didn't actually play well until that had fully healed. Adrian Peterson's played through a sports hernia, which he's been in the news again. I think DWI, right? Whatever.
And a gun, and yeah.
Of course. Why didn't I just assume that? But the players do play through a fair amount of injury, and the question is are you hurt or are you injured? The problem here is that the nature of this enforces, I think, a dynamic that kind of gets to why this is a Vikings problem, right? Because I think a fairly intuitive response is, well, he could have just pulled himself out at any time in the game. And that's true, right? That he could have, right? But in addition to kind of this imbalance in power, right? These are his employers, right? And so he's, whether or not they explicitly pressure him to do it, there is a pressure that exists to play through hurt, to play through injury. In addition to that fact, there is also the decades of conditioning that football players go through to hide injuries, right? And to play through it. And there's this understanding among players that at some point play at a high level, that them playing at 80% is somehow better for the team than the guy below them playing at 100%. And somehow we all manage this kind of understanding without insulting the backups, even though when the backups come up, you got to make sure you say stuff like, well, we hold them to the same standard, of course. Why wouldn't you think Verdarian Lowe is Joe Thomas? Which is kind of this absurd kind of parody, self-parody that we all go through. But yeah, there is both a culture of having to play through extraordinary pain and injury to prove your worth, especially as somebody whose career is, it might be over, but right, whose career is on a lifeline. This is a guy that was on the couch at some point last season before the Chiefs signed him. This is a guy that was not signed until the end of training camp, which we've discussed before. There's a pretty good chance that was maybe his choice, which may be bad choice. But this is not a guy who is in such high demand that teams were, bidding for his services. And if you're not in high demand enough for teams to be starting a contract war with you, any snap could definitely be your last. I mean, that's true for any player, but for non-injury reasons, that could be true. And so when you are injured, you don't want to immediately tank the rest of your value, because actual millions of dollars in potentially the healthcare that you need to take care of the injury you have could be on the line. And by the healthcare, I don't mean that the Vikings would pull his insurance, or that the NFL would somehow eliminate the pension that he's entitled to because it's like a 5-year, I think, vested veteran, but rather because insurance sucks and sometimes you got to pay for stuff, right? And so I don't know what the NFL's pension insurance plan is, but I bet there are like co-pays and limits and deductibles and stuff like that. And so you want money to cover that and all of these other things, right? Like you don't know if you're going to be able to get a job after football. And so building up as much equity as possible is really, really important. And so, and then also like you get painted as a bad teammate. So there's this moral opponent component attached to it, which is like a really, I mean, I'm in the middle of writing something about this, which you won't see for a long time, but the kind of tension between what it means to be a good teammate and what it means to have solidarity in football perfectly kind of strikes at that divide. And this is what this is. This is being a good teammate. This is not solidarity, right? So all of that is in play that I think implicates the question of like, hey, Carson Wentz could have just taken himself out. And it's like, yeah, but you saw what happened to Anthony Richardson when he took himself out. Now, he took himself out for essentially a BS reason, right? But message received by everyone else in the NFL that there is a limit to your own ability to self-report reasons that you can take out. Now, is Carson Wentz taking himself out of the game more reasonable? Yeah, of course. But it's the same question that Luke is asking. Where's the line? But this time on Carson Wentz's side. So this time, Luke is asking on the side of the Vikings, but Carson Wentz is asking the same question of himself. Now, that means, in my opinion anyway, that because all of these things are true, because players have less power, because there's a lot that they're fighting for, because all of these forces, economic, cultural, moral, are arrayed against their ability to preserve their own health. I think it's on the Vikings to protect Carson Wentz more than Carson Wentz, right? And so then the next question, of course, is like, well, you expect, players to play through pain all the time. And the thing is, there's not like a quantitative metric here, right? We can't say, well, when you're at injury level 3, you got to push through the pain and play, right? But when you're at injury level 5, that's when you have to take them out. Like, we don't have that, right? But I think wherever that line is, and it'd be kind of cool to be able to develop a heuristic to draw that line, right? A rubric, right? But wherever that line is, I feel like we were past it, right? Because he is not only in the bulkiest shoulder harness I've ever seen, it had like extra straps and extra padding. It was so bulky that they were like, oh, in walkthroughs, you should practice with this. Not in practice, in walkthroughs, just so you've got, so it's not too uncomfortable to play with. That's crazy. He was wearing a harness earlier. I've seen like Baker Mayfield wear a harness on his opposite shoulder. I've seen other quarterbacks do it. And it didn't look anything like this cyborg attachment, this RoboCop attachment that this guy has, but instead of like it being a gun, it actually just represents the pain that is being inflicted upon him. Even light contact seemed to cause him pain, much less the extraordinary contact he went through behind a sieve of an offensive line, right? And I mean, like, yeah, he is holding onto the ball, right? And so he's taking on a ton of hits, and he's taking on so much pain that like the Carson Wentz hater, have to like reevaluate my framework for talking about this game, right? Because I have to just be like, oh my God, it's happening. He's not going to play for the team anymore. He's going out ignobly. I was proven right about the concerns about his injury history and his level of play and his weaknesses. But like, at what human cost? Do I have to interrogate my own relationship to how it happens before I have a take on that? That's crazy. It was the amount of pain he seemed to be in was outstanding. I can't imagine it. I mean, like, I've been in a ton of pain in my life, right? A lot of us have suffered injuries and stuff like that, right? And I can't imagine having been in that pain, right? So that to me is on the Vikings, and it is cruel to me that they did that.
It felt like
a lesson for me.
It felt like one of the torture episodes of 24.
You're right, just so gratuitous.
It was like one of the torture scenes in 24. It looked like the bulk of the movie The Passion of the Christ. Mel
Gibson would have loved this game. That's a good point.
It was sadism. It kept going. You knew at halftime it was time to be done. Anybody watching that game that wasn't Kirk Herbstreit, which that's another
that was wild.
Like, nobody is questioning Carson Wentz being tough. No one on the planet is allowed to question that. He played through some ridiculous stuff for the Eagles. He played through what I can only imagine is just some of the worst pain of his entire life with that shoulder injury every time he was getting knocked down. Anytime the wind blew on him.
Yeah, it was nuts. And
you knew at halftime it was done. Pull him, for God's sake.
Yeah, dude, I like Max Brosmer, and if the Vikings just came out and said, "Hey, Max Brosmer's great, we love to have him on the roster. He made the roster as an undrafted free agent for a reason, but that dude is not ready. He would be spaghetti out there," and I'd be like, "Fine." Put him out there, dude. It'll be like it ruins him forever. Hey, that guy's about to die. I don't really care about Max Brosmer's development.
Put JJ out there. I don't care. Put a fan out there. Someone who is not like playing in. You can't think straight when you're in that amount of pain at all. You can't. It's not possible. So and I want to give Wentz a bit of the benefit of the doubt on some of these terrible decisions he's made the past 2 weeks, but like the past 3 weeks, I suppose, just based on like, oh yeah, he's clearly in a bunch of pain. He's not thinking clearly. He's hurt. Okay, fine. But at some point as a coach, you have to just take him out and be done.
After the game, obviously he was asked this. After the game, he's asked like, "Hey, did you ever consider putting the backup quarterback in, Max Brosmer?" Sorry, it's just like so ridiculous that they had to ask this question. Hey, this guy is like dying. It looks like he might have the plague or something. He is disintegrating before our eyes. Have you considered the guy who's not in the middle of a Thanos snap to play? And so his answer was, yeah, we did. I think what you have to, QB Carson Wentz is a veteran player. He understands some of our circumstances tonight. I think it's very difficult to ask a rookie to go in there for his first performance and have to be weathering it a little bit for the group, which I just want to pause there for a little bit. At some point, your backup quarterback does have to, whether or not he's a rookie, has to go in there and weather it a little bit. Like that's the job, right? Anyway, so he continues. I did think about that at different times in the game, but at the same time, the confidence that we have in Max and the upside that we see in Max is real. But we also wouldn't want to send him out there and force a level of trying to figure it outness that's probably beyond the guy playing for the first time. Again, there's a first time to play. Like he has to play for the first time sometime. I understand what they're really saying is he's not ready yet. We think he can be ready, and he's not ready yet. I understand that that's what they're saying, but they don't want to say it. Even though it seems like they have to make a move at some point, I assume. But if he's the backup quarterback, then why? Like, I don't think Desmond Ridder is a great quarterback, but I have to imagine if that's the way they see Max Brosmer, then why did you leave him in England? I assume because I haven't heard anything about him that when they cut him in England, he just kind of stayed there. So why? Like he is at least a quarterback that has started games. Not well, that's why he was available. But like, if that's the level of play that Max Brosmer is at, why didn't you sign or why didn't you retain Desmond Ridder? That's kind of nuts. So he says that, and then he says that was kind of where the decision was, to continue to go with Carson as long as Carson felt like he was healthy enough to keep playing, and the medical tidbit as well. And of course, that puts it on Carson to self-report, which again is always on the player to report on their level of pain and stuff like that. But it is also on the coaching staff, which are entrusted with these players, in their health and their safety. Like coaching plays a significant role in player safety, and that's one of the responsibilities you have to take seriously as a coach. At some point, you just have to be like, hey, man, we got to pull you. Otherwise, we're not going to be seeing you in this dimension, right? Like it's we got to put Max Brosmer in. And then Max Brosmer gets hurt and you have an emergency quarterback. It's JJ McCarthy. And maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe JJ's ankle is only good for jumping over a falling Justin Jefferson. Fine. then you can play Wildcat. I don't care. This guy is about to die. You're not going to win this game anyway. F it. Play Wildcat. I don't care.
Cam Akers. Put Cam Akers back there and just call it good.
Yeah. You love Cam Akers.
Put Adam Thielen under center. I don't care.
Yeah, Adam Thielen has learned the offense for like 4 weeks. Put him under center. I don't care.
Even if he's just handing off to Aaron Jones, anything would have been better than watching Carson attempt to be out there. It was frustrating. It's one of the reasons why I refused to record. It's like, I told Arif, I'm going on strike until Carson Wentz is no longer QB1 for the Vikings. Like, I can't do this. I cannot, because this would have been, our iTunes rating is like hanging by a thread.
Right. I've had to hold back a couple of times. Every time I come up with a bad analogy for how hurt he is, it's because I am in the middle of saying something and censoring myself. Like
this, it would have just been screaming. There's no way I went to one of those, like, I went to bed upset and I woke up upset. Like, and then I was confused when a tweet I put out all of a sudden gained traction overnight.
Yeah, when you showed it to me, which I thought was kind of early in the process, it had like 1.2 thousand likes, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
More people liked that tweet than listened to the last episode we had.
Fantastic.
It's like, oh, okay, this is just where we're at. All right. I don't want to talk about the game itself. I think that the game itself gets buried at the 50. The team can, manage, but now we're left kind of in the game's wake.
I do want to add that there is a tweet every week from Sam Hoppen, who does data analysis and stuff. It's good stuff, but he does a new chart every week. Did we really get beat that bad? In the week 8 one, so it's net success rate, right? So it takes out kind of like weird stuff like kickoff returns and explosives that are kind of difficult to track from game to game to game. And kind of tells you on play to play who is better. And one guess as to who got beat the worst this week.
Well, I happen to know. I've seen the chart. It was the Minnesota Vikings.
It's bad. They're outpacing the league. It is bad. Like, there are some like 31-point blowouts on here that you're just like, oh man, I remember watching that game. They got demolished. No, the Vikings got more demolished, it turns out.
It hurt. So we're not going to cover the actual game itself. That's foolish at this point. We can kind of cover what happens in its wake, because this is a team that, quite frankly, deserves its high draft pick that it's going to get. This is not a serious playoff team. It's been argued that it's one of the more disappointing teams in the league based on how well the team did last year. It's clear that the team gambled on the quarterback situation and lost. We get to see what happens with JJ McCarthy here moving forward. There have been rumblings this week about potentially trading our tight end. I think Eric Thompson had said that that if the Packers want our kicker, it's going to be two firsts. Like there's just no way. But like, the fallout of this game is that the NFC North is not getting the NFC North is not possible. And we get to have our season's basically done by week 8. We get to have a little bit of fun here against a bad Ravens defense and a god awful Cowboys defense a little bit later in the season. But otherwise, I'm not sure I see more than 2 wins for the rest of the year. So, tank for Tua ?
This is going to be an interesting quarterback class in the draft. Obviously, I haven't dove into it. It doesn't feel right to say dove for like intellectual deep dives, but sure, I haven't dove into it or anything like that. I follow my friends who care about this stuff during the off season, so I don't know yet. But it seems like it'll be interesting because none of the quarterbacks that people thought were going to be good or interesting, or very few of them, actually are all that good or interesting. But some of the ones that flew under the radar seem to be quite good. So like Fernando Mendoza, I don't know, like Lenore Sellers is coming off of a bad game, reportedly. I don't actually watch college football anymore because I have to spend time with my loved one, singular.
Not thruple. Not
thruple. But yeah, it sounds like there are some like interesting prospects like Dante Moore, right? Interesting prospects. Oh, the Vikings, I believe, were at a Dante Moore Fernando Mendoza game. Could be for any number of reasons. I'm confident Indiana has other players because they're like a number 2. I don't know. They're a top number 5 2. Country. Yeah. Okay. I know ball. Oregon is 4.
Well, you know ball as far as Indiana is concerned because of the coach, because of Cignetti.
Cignetti. He just wins game. Google him. But yeah, Oregon, I believe, entered that game like ranked number 4 or something. So they've got like players, right? So, that's not the reason necessarily that the Vikings visited, but they did send more than one scout reportedly, which is unusual. So maybe it's on their radar. I would be surprised. Maybe they're just doing due diligence, but it's a conversation that's kind of interesting to have if it goes sideways. And the question that is well worth asking is like, wait, hold on, are we actually talking about drafting a quarterback after just 2 games of this guy? And like, no, we're not seriously talking about it. We're opening a question and naming some names, but I don't think that that's likely or the correct path necessarily. But if things continue to go sideways, it's worth bringing up because we have seen teams often correctly give up on players very quickly. It's like Josh Rosen's obviously kind of the example, but there are a couple of other examples throughout, NFL history, and it's, some of it's off field, right? But a lot of it's on field. And, if McCarthy plays at that level, I don't know, watch some Mendoza games, see if the Vikings are in striking distance of grabbing that guy. Probably not, but interesting. But yeah, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that that's likely, but it's a terrifying possibility that warrants some level of thinking, not a ton, but I don't want to say that it makes sense to give up this early, but I don't want to close the door to the possibility that we're going to learn enough information sooner rather than later.
You could just draft like 6 offensive linemen in a row. Be like, the odds of all of them, like
one of these guys has to be able to play center. One of
like, well, for the first time in NFL draft history, a team drafted 3 centers in the first and second round. We're gonna find the guy. We are going to do it. Yeah. I was going to say apologies for depressing people, but you came in for the recap episode of the Chargers episode. So like,
right. Yeah.
Of the Chargers game, there's not much good news, sadly. So let's get into some mailbag stuff. This is going to be a shorter episode for obvious reasons. Damien asks, ultimately, was Wentz just 2025's Josh Dobbs?
I don't think Wentz had a high the way Joshua Dobbs did, right? He had like 2 games where you were like, oh my God, this is stuff. Like we can rally around this. And like Wentz's wins were like, 1, hey, happy to be here. Thank you, Isaiah Rodgers. And 2, hey man, you got to throw it as short as possible and as quickly as possible, and then the score will take care of itself. This team is doo-doo butt cheeks. Don't worry about it, right? Those were the 2 wins he has. Whereas Joshua Dobbs was just like, my God, you can do that on a field. That's crazy. How is he doing this? Do you know that he's an aerospace engineer? Like, it was just like it was fun. It was crazy. And the Wentz stuff, it's like you're genuinely debating like, well, the production is better, but it felt bad. So I want to go to the guy who had much worse production, but I felt something good in one of those 2 games. So I want that actually, even though like the numbers are terrifying. And it's not, it was never like a bad instinct. That's how mediocre it was. So no, I don't think so. Even though Joshua Dobbs had like 2 moments in the sun, 1 Broncos game, and then he got pulled against the Raiders.
Really had
I
some
still
high
think
hopes for
I
that.
still think he could have done all right in that Broncos game if he didn't start off with that weird read option, whatever it was.
Yeah, that was
Just set things up.
unfortunate. Damien also asks, what other demands should James have made before ending his strike? Restarting the government, making Kwesi consult the consensus board during the draft, getting Aaron Rodgers to issue a public apology for all of his BS.
Oh man, the worst is that Aaron Rodgers did a bunch of stuff in his game against the Packers, which first of all, beating the Packers, which like, you take the victories that you can get sometimes. But like there are moments where you're just like, he kind of has a point that probably they should have thrown that flag. Like he does it 18 times and 17 times he's just being whiny, but like they super should have thrown that flag.
Yeah,
That's how
absolutely.
bad the officiating was.
Like, that's hilariously egregious.
Yeah.
Let's go to Max, who asks, has the Vikings defense been disguising less at the line this year? Seems like they are trying to play straight up. Metellus isn't doing his thing and seems to be put in situations different than he was last year.
So I didn't know of a way to answer this systematically, so I'll answer it in a second. But I did want to share that I was like, hey, I wonder if Sumer Brain has this, because I've run my piece about Sumer Brain on how I don't trust it, how I don't like it, and I think that the tool is not very good. But I was like, hey, I'm going to continue giving them multiple shots, right? So it's like, hey, give me the stunt and or twist rates for the defensive line for the Vikings in 2025, 2024, 2023. Separate them by season, only do it on passing plays, and give me only opponent dropbacks as the denominator. I thought, as clear as possible, right? And to its credit, it was like, I have no idea. I can't do that. I don't know. But the really funny thing was, do I still have it up? Let me see if I can find it. Oh my God, I do. Okay, yeah. So I don't have access to specific defensive stunt and twist rate data for the Minnesota Vikings across the blank seasons, right? It explains what stunts and twists are. Great. A little paragraph on that. That's good context. And then the last paragraph was, for this type of advanced defensive analytics, you might want to reach out to Hashem Alsaket or Jorge Lopez Johnson, who can help you explore alternative data sources or methodologies for tracking these specific defensive techniques. And I've never seen that before. I was like, what? And so I Googled them, and they're both engineers at Sumer Brain. And like they're like lead AI machine learning engineers, which is so interesting because like, do you think that, because it doesn't know that I'm a reporter, right? Like it just thinks is it like a random user will be like, hey, Hashem, word up, I have a question. That seems unlikely. But B, I don't think I've ever seen an AI be like, ask my dads. They might know. Like, what? And again, that's like a credit to it. But like, I was just like, what in the world is this? So, okay, great. But to answer your question, based off of just like me watching and, trying to figure out based off of like, hey, is Javon Hargrave as bad as Luke says? Is Jalen Redmond playing as well as Tyler Forness is saying? Let me take a look at these with like my own two eyes and pro.nfl.com. So I'm like, and so it wasn't to holistically look at the defensive line when I was doing this kind of like deeper dive, but my impression is no, I don't think that they're playing fewer games. And maybe that perception is color, and games is another word for a stunt or twist, defensive line games. And maybe that perception is colored by how often Brian Flores would stunt or twist defensive linemen at Miami or in Miami, and how more proliferate that was there versus what we saw even in year one with the Vikings. And so maybe my perception of how often they do it is just a little bit skewed because the thing I'd always been measuring it against was my initial impression of Brian Flores as a defensive mind. But I don't think that has changed too much. But I do think that this is like a pretty good question. I will say that on the back end, on the back seven, the Vikings rotate their coverages from pre-snap to post-snap the most often of any team in the league. And this data that I had access to that told me this was 2 or 3 weeks old, so it may have changed. But I think it effectively communicates this idea that when they show single high, they're more likely to play two high and vice versa. than the other teams, but they don't do it at like beyond a 60% rate, because if you do that more than 60% of the time, now you're just telling them it's the other coverage. But now your players are out leveraged, right? So it's actually worse. But they do seem to be disguising the back end more often. So there's that. The Metellus isn't doing his thing and seems to be put in situations different than he was last year. That part I do think is true. I think you're playing Metellus, and a lot of this I think is because of Harrison Smith's pitch count over the past 2 games. It feels like Metellus was playing more at home, so I think that that's a pretty significant part of it. But when that was happening, I think you're playing Metellus too high. You're playing him in a lot of free safety stuff. You are walking him down to do man coverage stuff, and I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Again, I don't think that the AJ Brown, big play that he gave up early in the game against the Eagles was really, his fault so much as it was the pass rush. But I think he was kind of playing out of place. But I think that he's back in kind of his role. He's just not as effective as we're used to seeing, which I think that'll probably tick up over time.
Next question is from Iowa Josh, who asks, how large of a draft pick is it worth to sign Jameis and ride the season out? McCarthy probably isn't going to be healthy for long behind that O-line. We might as well have some crab legs.
I don't think Jameis would. I assume he's still on the Giants.
Yes.
I don't think it would take a ton of draft picks to move him or anything like that. He signed for very little. He hasn't demonstrated that he's worth more than what he signed for. And he's older. So even though he's a quarterback and he'll fetch a higher price than like a guard, I don't see him going for more than like a 5th round pick or anything like that. I just don't think that's a good idea. Not because Jameis isn't a good quarterback, or not because even that he's a bad person, which is an important consideration. But because it doesn't matter. It's the goal of the season right now is to see what McCarthy has right now and to put him on a path to maximally develop. And I understand you're like, oh my God, the offensive line is so bad, McCarthy's going to get hurt. No, the center position is really bad, but right now the offensive line is not the worst in the NFL. I think in pass block win rate, they're like 27th or something like that. That's not great, but I think that they're better than their rank in pass block win rate because a lot of that data was accumulated while they were playing 1 out of 5 starters. And now they're going to play, hopefully, 4 of them. Again, we don't know what's going on with Christian Darrisaw. But I think it's going to be better than that. And I think at some point, we have seen rookies play well behind bad offensive lines. I mean, like the first couple of years of Andrew Luck, which maybe that's a bad example because he retired early due to injuries. But we've seen good players as rookies play behind poor offensive lines. It happens. And I don't think this one's nearly as poor as a lot of offensive lines. So no, I don't know that McCarthy is any more injury prone. He did have 2 pretty significant, it turns out, injuries in quick succession. So it feels weird to say that, but that's not really how injury proneness works. Sometimes you just have a couple of injuries, right? Just like the beginning of Matthew Stafford's career. Always injured and then just didn't get injured for 10 years. And I guess he's dead now, but that's separate. I wouldn't get Jameis Winston, even though he's actually a pretty classic O'Connell style quarterback in that he will just take chances and take hits.
Next question is from whence we came.
Okay.
With Carson Wentz being forced to play with a season-ending injury and then being replaced with a tight end, did Kevin O'Connell get his info on Carson from the Reef?
The fact that when he was waived, they replaced him with a tight end, I can't. It was so funny. And I tweet out this. I tweet hey, I can't believe that the Vikings did this or whatever, right? When they put him on IR, I'm quote tweeting it with this was basically irresponsible from the Vikings. And then there's the transaction right after that from Tom Pelissero, hey, so they added Ben Sims. And I was like, hey, a tight end swap. And it went from dude, we got to pay attention to how screwed up this is and even kind of be deferential to the pain that Carson Wentz went through with, but he is a tight end. We can't lose sight of that. That was so funny that they added Ben Sims. I did notice the first reply to Pelissero. I just thought this was funny. The first reply to Pelissero was the Vikings always get the Packers sloppy seconds. And it's who do you He didn't sign with. Who do you think he played for before the Packers? This is a reunion, my guy. Anyway, yeah. So does the universe align with the bits? Incredibly well, to a disturbing degree. Yes.
Yannick asks, does Wentz's injury make J.J. McCarthy this year's Nick Foles?
Yeah, send it. Yep.
Michael asks, with Santos missing a field goal in almost the exact same situation and fashion as Riker did, do teams practice the hurry-up kick, or whatever the broadcast called it, with a K-ball or a normal football?
So this question is significant because when you do the hurry-up kick, they keep the ball that's out there on the field. And so that's because it takes time to switch in the special K-balls. And that has been attributed as a factor in why kickers might miss these hurry-up kicks. I don't think it actually, in the context of Will Reichert, I don't think it actually makes sense because the broadcast has a really good replay of the kick, and broadcasters love to use golf as an analogy, like all the time, because they golf and they love golf. And if they can slip in the fact that they love golf, they'll do it. But here it was pretty appropriate. They sliced it. Like it was, he kicked the turf, right? Like he was kicking through the turf to get to the ball. That's why he missed. And what's interesting is that his accuracy didn't even seem to suffer. It was really just the fact that hitting the turf first, cut his power in half. And so he was just a little bit short. So I don't think that was it. But to answer your question, and also, sorry, the reason that this is important is because there was a very recent rule change this year, in fact, that allowed kickers and specialists to treat the K-ball the same way that like quarterbacks get to treat the game balls regularly. And so we learned a lot about this during Deflategate. But essentially, equipment managers will put the ball straight from the manufacturer. They receive the ball and they put it through its paces because coming out of the box, it is actually not that well fit for playing. It's not very good new. It's slick and it's a little shiny. Quarterbacks do have ball pressure preferences, as we also discovered during Deflategate. But the malleability and the grippiness of the leather of the ball matters a lot. And there's a bunch of ways that you can do it. And so we've seen there's a bunch of little human interest style stories where they follow an equipment manager of a particular team and they see the ball get treated. And it's like, oh, they rub this mud on it because that's what they do in baseball. And maybe the mud gets rid of the thing. They use like a horse brush or whatever on it. They put it in the microwave for a little bit. Like they do all kinds of stuff to make it more malleable, more responsive, and grippier. The K-balls never go through that. They just get the shiny out of the box ball until this year. And now kickers have the ability to do it the same way, to modify the ball in the same way. So every time you saw a kick in previous years, it was with the original ball. But I don't know, and I would love for someone to look into this, if the K-ball is one of the reasons that kickers are kicking at incredible distances this year, because it seems to be part of a trend, but it also seems to have spiked a little bit. But B, whether or not the preparation process for the K-ball is any different than the preparation process for a game ball. Because if it's not, then it doesn't matter, really, that they have to switch the ball in. But they talk about it a lot, so it suggests that it is a little bit different. Now, to actually answer the question, yes, they do. They do practice as if, in the hurry up, you have to do the game ball. They 100% practice the fire drill kick with the ball that they would end up playing within the game, which would be a game ball. Yep.
Kenneth Allen asks, how bad is the recent news for Kevin O'Connell's reputation as a quarterback whisperer? He played a quarterback he knew had a torn labrum for multiple games instead of signing another quarterback or playing the rookie on the roster, despite the bye time as time to find someone. This strikes me as wildly problematic, is it?
I think it's fair to call it problematic. That's why I kind of took the Vikings a little bit to task at the top of this pod on it. But I don't think it implicates his reputation as a quarterback whisperer, right? It might make you kind of look at some of the quotes that he's had about development, look at it in a different light, like the way that he talks about, like, hey, I think, young quarterbacks fail organizations a lot less than organizations fail young quarterbacks. And you're like, oh, that's such like a nice player forward way to think about, roster management. And like the other side of it is, but if you're an old quarterback, I will sacrifice you to the old gods. And it's like, oh yeah, you didn't say that part. You should have said that part. But it kind of puts that into a different light, and it maybe changes your understanding of Kevin O'Connell as like a moral actor, right? Like the way that you think of him as a person. But I don't think it really changes his reputation as a quarterback whisperer. I think maybe Wentz's level of play might. But now we can get to excuse her for injury, just like I did for Baker, and it happened to make me look good later. Truly, I got lucky with that one, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I don't think it changes the reputation that he has for his ability to get the most out of quarterbacks. It just makes him look like a dick when he does it now, which it wouldn't be the first coach.
No. Also, Kenneth Allen asks, recent interviews revealed that Joe Flacco is an anime fan. Putting two and two together, this is probably responsible for his transformation into elite Dragon Flacco and his long career. Which anime would Arif recommend JJ McCarthy watch to have a successful career?
So I was like, what in the world? And so I Googled it, and there's this clip from a podcast, Andrew Whitworth's podcast, I think. It's like Andrew Whitworth and Ryan Fitzpatrick have a podcast, I guess, which I think those are two pretty good personalities. That makes sense. And Joe Flacco was on it, and he talked about, and so I'm going to link an Instagram video. There's a clip from the podcast in the show notes, where he's like, yeah, my kid and I, we've been watching a lot of One Piece, and it has 1,500 episodes, which, Jesus. But also, like, I was telling the other guys in the locker room, and they're like, hey, yeah, you should watch Death Note, which like is famously like one of the, again, this is just from doing research, famously one of the anime that you tend to recommend to people who want to get into it the first time, or you're trying to get someone into it the first time. That's like one of them, right? It's like that, Attack on Titan, I think. Although I guess that gets like really complicated later on. People used to do it with Sword Art Online. Kind of glad that they don't anymore. Not that I have opinions on anime. But yeah, you had like some starter anime, and that's like one of them is Death Note. And so I guess he's gotten halfway through, which a lot of people in the comments really enjoyed because, again, according to the comments, that's when it falls off. Like once the kind of the climax of that particular arc concludes, it just kind of sucks as an anime. Haven't watched it, couldn't tell you if that's the case. But yeah, so those seem to be the anime that he watched. What would I recommend JJ McCarthy watch to have a successful career? Probably one that has kind of like a younger protagonist that continues to fight through extraordinary odds, which I know I'm describing a very narrow subsection of anime, so you're just going to have to work with me here. It's very, very specific and niche. No other anime really kind of follow this trend. And gradually gains power over time, in part through the power of friendship, but primarily through the power of kicking ass, the power of power. And yeah, you kind of like through a bunch of adversity, kind of fight through it. And so I asked all 8 AI companions that I know of. So I asked, because I wanted to burn as many trees as possible. So I asked like ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude, and Gemini and Copilot.
Your go-to Grok, yeah.
Yeah, Grok, of course. Grok, the Grok that everyone has access to, and then Grok Pro that you have to pay $200 for.
There you go.
Yeah.
Who needs water?
Right. Yeah. Copilot, Apple Intelligence, of course. Yeah, so all of them. And DeepSeek, some implementation of Llama, which I think is just Perplexity. And they said they also acknowledged that I was describing a very narrow range of anime. In fact, it's such a rare story to find in general. But they said Hunter x Hunter, which was crazy to me because I thought that was kind of one of the ones that you were supposed to watch after you'd already watched a little bit of anime, because it like plays on some of the tropes of the genre. But yeah, you got to trust them, right? I asked 8 of them, so
Yeah, well, especially Grok. If Grok tells you to do something, you should probably do it.
You should probably do it. Otherwise, Mecha Hitler's going to come out. You don't want that.
That is how Grok works. We are going to slowly but surely get off the rails. Not completely yet, but Lurking asks, was the destruction of Carson Wentz the human sacrifice required to break the curse?
The curse is capital C, by the way, in the question. I feel like close, but no. I think it has to be a guy from Minnesota. Which the next question does ask about Trey Lance, and he is from Minnesota. But Carson Wentz is from Bismarck. So nope, you're close. You're so close, but no. We haven't achieved the conditions Cabin of the Woods style to appease the old gods.
No, not yet. Eldon asks, is Trey Lance the next quarterback signing for the Vikings, since it's clear they are using this season to troll Arif?
Yeah, again, affirmation that I am the protagonist of reality, and that all takes should be cycled through the lens of how does this affect the Reef. Yeah, that seems likely. I think Easton Stick is still, he almost played, didn't he? Easton Stick is still an active quarterback in the NFL, so you could grab him. You could grab Trey Lance. I have run out of NDSU quarterbacks. There's like another one floating around out there. Oh yeah, Cam Miller. You could probably grab him.
It'd be fun. The Rabble Rouser asks, for Arif's Fragility of Human Memory Corner.
Outstanding name.
Has Josh Dobbs forgotten enough of the Vikings offense to succeed in Minnesota yet?
Yeah, I mean, the more Josh Dobbs knew about the offense, the worse he got. So, fair enough. I probably not. Did you know he's an aerospace engineer? He's a rocket scientist. No, I don't think he's. I don't know if you've heard that. Yeah, I don't think he's forgotten the offense enough.
Raul asks, for the good teams corner, is Jonathan Taylor the most under the radar Hall of Famer in the league today?
I super like this question, and also no, because he's already getting MVP steam right now. Maybe if you had asked this question 2 years ago or last year, that might be more. Rahul, of course, is from Carmel, Indiana, so take that for what it's worth. I would say almost always that answer is an offensive lineman. So I was trying to think of an offensive lineman who is good, but it's not so good that we always talk about it, Lane Johnson or Penei Sewell, right? Okay, we know you're getting enough, and you're not an under the radar offensive lineman. I was thinking who is consistently good performance year to year, and I was going through the PFF grades, which of course are gospel, and I treat it as such. And every time I bring up a PFF grade, you have to know that I am transmitting exactly my opinion in totality when I do it. And Garrett Bowles came up, and I was actually, that's a really good one. Garrett Bowles has been absolutely outstanding throughout his career. And I was under the radar Hall of Famer would suggest that he gets into the Hall of Fame. So let me look up his accolades. And all he has is a 2020 second team All-Pro. Didn't even make the Pro Bowl in 2020. Just second team All-Pro in 2020, which is crazy because he has been playing outstandingly. And I was maybe Colton Miller. And then I saw it. It's Creed Humphrey. It's definitely Creed at the center for the Chiefs. It's absolutely Creed Humphrey. A center never gets any attention. I actually should probably look up Creed Humphrey. I didn't look up what his accolades are, but he's been clearly the best center in the NFL for quite some time. And this is crazy, despite the fact that he's not that good at snapping the ball. Of all the things, the best center in the NFL's weakness is the center's job. But he's such an outstandingly good blocker that I think that he's going to make it. So he got into the league in 2021. He made the Pro Bowl in 2022, 2023, and 2024. He did make the PFWL rookie team in 21. He's been a first team All-Pro once and a second team All-Pro once. It's really early in his career. He's 26, but I think that is the correct answer here.
Next question is from my 5-year-old plans to replace me. It says, question for Arif's medical advice corner. When I ran a 50K Ultra on the Superior hiking trail, I sprained my ankle on mile 2, but my wife allowed me to keep going and finish the race, which is 30 more miles.
How generous of her. What in the
How
world?
negligent was she to let me keep running? And how does it compare to Kevin O'Connell letting Wentz keep
Okay.
playing through a dislocated shoulder and torn labrum? I want to also include that there's some rib issues there too, right?
Oh, with Carson, yeah, I think Alec Lewis reported that there are rib issues on top of that. I think Kevin Seifert might have as well, but I initially saw that from Alec Lewis. Boy. Okay, so first things first, there's this channel, Sam Reed, who does a show on his own channel that he calls Studio Review. Fine, whatever. Outstanding channel. And I believe it was it yesterday, maybe today, that he posted the video that he did the Taco Bell 50K, which I haven't watched yet. James has. And I didn't know that James watched this channel too. And he says it's very funny. So I'm going to link it in the show notes. But Sam Reed's channel is
very, very funny.
outstanding. Sam Reed does incredible content. He went to Australia to check out the Australian Outback Steakhouse to see if it was. I went Outback and then I paused to say Steakhouse because I forgot Australia does have the Outback, which is in fact why it's called Outback Steakhouse. But he went to Outback Steakhouse in Australia, which many Australians are convinced doesn't exist. Because, like, why would they have an Australian-themed restaurant? Which is a great question. But they do have at least one, and he visited it. That's an outstanding video. He did go to Australia for, like, other reasons, too. But yeah, he does great videos. Like, my favorite series of his was ranking the complimentary breakfasts at various hotel chains. Outstanding work. So, recommend this channel. I'm going to link that. So, to answer your question, I would be very concerned about the nature of your relationship if the power dynamic I described between Carson Wentz and Kevin O'Connell was very similar to the power dynamic you have with your wife. Because if that's the case, and only this is if, right? I just want to make it clear. If that's the case, you got to get out of there, buddy. That's bad.
Yeah, if you're in a situation of next man up,
yeah.
I don't know what to tell you, dude.
Yeah,
but,
if a common response to genuine pain and injury is rub some dirt on it, like you got to get out. So that's number one. Number two, we all recognize the humble brag that happened here. So yeah, congrats, you ran a 50K ultra marathon. You deserve there you go. Good work. You're a good human. You're better than us. But if that's not the case, that it just feels like that's on you, man. That feels like that's super on you. And I think, and hopefully when you got home, your complaints, which of course you complained, there's no problem with that, but your complaints weren't so grating on your wife that they created any problems. So yeah, that's my answer to that. Please, if she has the kind of power over you that a coach has over a player, find a couples therapist.
It really does do the whole "Are you hurt or are you injured?" Like, there is that. Also, a question for Arif's ranking cancellation corner: where does Carson Wentz being sent to IR rank on your list of best moments in your life? That's cruel for you, or toward you, I feel.
Yeah. Okay. So like, I get it, right? But like, I just tweeted out before the show, I just tweeted out to someone who was being mean to Carson Wentz. But like I my initial tweet was like, I can't believe that the Vikings did this. That's incredible how much pain that he was going through. And a bunch of people are like, yeah, or they liked the tweet or they retweeted it or whatever. And this guy responds with, how are you people not happy? You people not happy to be done with this loser? And I was like, hey, man, like, be a human for like 1 second, just 1 second, and understand that he's in immense pain, that he's about to get surgery. Like we talk about players getting surgery fairly constantly because it is such an injurious sport. But like surgery is like a big deal. They cut you open and then often put a bunch of stuff in you to fix you and hope that it dissolves, or they take it out later. And like your body is not used to that. That is, we talk about like trauma from like a mental health standpoint all the time, but that is like the original definition. That is literally a trauma that you induce upon your body. The reason surgery is so recent in terms of medical history is because of how insane a wacko psycho it is. like they were like, we got to cut the limb off, before they were like, hey, we should like precisely cut whatever is open in here and like tinker around between whatever's going on between all these. They were like, we probably should just cut the whole thing off. Like that's where we're at. That's what the sawbones were, right? Surgery is crazy. It's legitimately nuts that we do it, and that we just kind of rely on the body to just heal itself because we cause precise, specific damage in a way that we're really confident will heal better than the damage that it was before. But you're just doing damage to the body in a very specific way. That's what surgery is. It's a big deal. Complications happen all the time. It hurts so much to do surgery. The Vikings have had multiple players now sue them for, malpractice because of botched medical care, including surgeries. Like, he's going through surgery, right? And so to be like, man, I can't believe you're not happy to be done with him. And it's like, I am happy that the Vikings don't have to start him anymore. I would have just preferred it happen a different way. The one where they don't have to cut him open and see all the barbecue tendons inside. Like we could have just missed that step if it were up to me. So that's my response to that guy. And so it makes it really difficult now that I've put that out there in the public to answer this question like, hey, God did this for me. And I am the chosen blessed one because this guy might not have a working shoulder for the rest of his life. So I'll say it in this way. God did do it for me because, again, I'm the protagonist of reality, but to teach me a lesson about how far bits can go and how they impact real people's lives. That's God was teaching me a lesson, and in the way that we know God does, used a poor soul as his example to give to the rest of us.
Are you referring to Carson Wentz as Job?
Yeah,
here?
Carson Wentz is Job, which I guess the more you know about that story, the worse that is. But whatever, it's fine. Take whatever interpretation you need from that.
Let's go to Cruise with Al and Alma I love this question so much. Because we haven't had a chance to talk about it because the news broke on Thursday, and I refused to record on Thursday. So this is our first chance to talk about it. Cruise with Al and Alma for Arif's gambling scandal corner. Which NFL head coach is most likely to get busted, Chauncey Billups style?
It's truly, truly incredible that this is. So for people who are somehow unfamiliar, Chauncey Billups, he was like a Detroit Piston, right? And a Denver Nugget.
Current coach, well, now he's suspended. Current coach of the Portland Trailblazers. The Jailblazers are back, baby.
The Jailblazers are back. But former, I want to say, shooting guard, right? Fun player. Now a coach gets busted for, I believe, two things, right? One is participation.
He's listed for two.
Yeah. So like one is the participation in a sports gambling ring. The other one is fixed poker and like extremely fixed poker games. Not like you just cheated a little bit of poker, but like you had a system and an underground network working with that system using manufactured objects.
Brown, or it's not James Brown. Jesus, James Bond style. James Brown and James Bond style like gadgets are involved
real shenanigans, right? Like
see-through tables and like marked cards that you can see with special contacts.
And like the actual mafia is involved in that one, and I assume the sports one too. Like in the FBI indictment, it's La Cosa Nostra. Like it's real stuff. They had, you see the nicknames that they had? They listed the mob nicknames, and you're like, this is a joke, right? Like, is the FBI doing anti-Italian racism? What is this? like these are just. So it was like Rudy the neck, and you're like, dude, that's from the 20s. No way is that real. So
no,
they're
just doing that skit from SNL about the last person to be able to make like Italian jokes.
Right? Yeah.
It turns out it's the FBI.
Yeah. Was that like a Shane Gillis bit too? Okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah. It turns out I was the last one to be able to make. But anyway, so there's like, there's all of that. Some NBA players got caught up in it. I don't believe Jonte Porter this time. He just got caught up in an earlier one, right? I don't think he's part of this one. Terry Rozier. Right? I don't know how to pronounce basketball players' names. Did I get that one right?
It's Rozier is correct. Yeah.
Cool. And like the classic, like bet on the under, I'll get injured like 9 minutes in or whatever. But yeah, huge thing. And they held like a press conference, and it's like a bunch of people that everyone who listens to the podcast knows. I hate this administration. I'm not going to get into detail about it. It's not a politics podcast, but like, seeing the indictment, and if like a quarter of that is true, it's like, hey, I don't ever want you to talk your stuff, right? I don't ever want you to do that. But like you might have done the right thing here, and that makes me feel very weird.
It's like the actual investigation has been going for like 3 or 4 years.
Right. Yeah.
It's like clearly lots and lots and lots of work, lots of hours has been put in. Questions on point shaving, questions on over-unders for specific players, and injury reports that weren't available to the public yet, and like seeing all sorts of money move on games that there's no earthly reason why the money should move that much on games.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the other thing, is like a lot of this stuff is tracked. So the question ends up being, which NFL coach would be involved in this sort of shenanigans?
We were talking about it because I was like, I don't think, like, I could obviously see abstractly someone who is like Mike McDaniel doing it, but I don't think he would do it just because of like, all of the stuff that he's talked about with sobriety, which I know is not the same thing as gambling, but like, it feels like that's something that he might just want to avoid. So I was like thinking through it, and I was like, maybe Cliff, but he's not a head coach. He's the coordinator for the Commanders. Maybe along those lines, Jonathan Gannon, but I don't see it. And then you said Big Dom.
I said Big Dom, the security guy for the Eagles.
And I was like, that technically doesn't answer the question, but I could see Nick Sirianni, the head coach of the Eagles, being the fall guy for Big Dom, which is crazy that the head coach is the fall, just some guy. But like, we know Big Dom's deal. This guy showed up after Cam Scatterbu like had his ankle turned all the way around. He's in the hospital in Philadelphia, right? Big Dom shows up to his room, gives him like, I think, a pizza and a Philly cheesesteak sandwich. And this story gets reported, right? And most people's response to this seems to be like, oh man, that's kind of nice. We don't really get to see, this side of Big Dom. It's always kind of like all of these, memes about him. And I was like, I don't know, man. I think he sent his regards. Yeah. I think he was telling Cam Scatterbu like what's what, right? Like, and especially with like the Philly cheesesteak, which I have to imagine is pretty analogous to like a cannoli, right? But in Philly Italian culture, that has to be. I think he showed up to Cam Scatterbu's hotel room or hospital room and been like, "Hey, you don't want to stay here too long, right? Like you don't want to have to extend your stay here, right? Got it. Okay, cool. Here's a Philly cheesesteak."
See, I like that. I like Sean Payton when something dirty comes out immediately. Yes, I think Sean Payton.
Yeah.
My final thing on this. You know who's not coaching this year because and just for wildly irresponsible prognostications and accusations here. Mike McCarthy is not the coach of the Cowboys this year because of a gambling ring. I like that thought.
I like that one. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. John Gruden, who also is not a head coach, but like, hey.
That's the reason why he's not currently a head coach. Although he's got a long list, but
He's got a long list.
That lawsuit that will never ever be settled,
Yeah, right.
that will be litigated until the heat death of the universe. Yeah, gambling in there somehow.
Yeah.
See that? I like these as answers. I think this could work.
Okay. Aside though, I don't watch baseball, I think is what you call it. But it seems like it's going into the 13th inning. I have like Twitter up, and that's all. 13th, Jesus, man, that's crazy.
It's bottom of the 12th right now. Yeah,
good.
I do have it up. Okay. I do have it up right now. Yeah, it's a 5-5 bottom of the 12th.
I think. Tell me if I'm right. I think I'm cheering for the villains here, which are the Dodgers.
I don't know. People have referred to the Toronto Blue Jays as America's team, which
that feels bad.
I do love the juxtaposition of that, almost as much as I love the Marlins jersey right behind home plate. Like there is a bright orange, and he's been there multiple games now.
That's like Marlins man, right? Like that's the guy. He's like known for. Yeah, okay, that rules. Props to that guy. Heck yeah. But yeah,
Marlins jersey.
I'm such like a baby when it comes to other sports and how I cheer for them. I'm just like, well, I like Shohei Ohtani. I'm just gonna cheer for him, right? Like I like that guy does all the stuff, right? That's Tungsten Arma Doyle. I'm gonna cheer for him. I hope he wins. Meanwhile, it's like the evil empire has bought him, and I'm just like a passive consumer of this fact.
Well, let's get to the next question from Kyle Segal. And I'm curious as to where this was coming from. If this is part of his, if this is still part of his experience living in Florida or what. But it said, resistance to wanton overdevelopment, growing class inequality, and autocratic governance has become a glue that holds our alliance together. Yet ideological differences remain. How would one go about bridging political and cultural disputes and keeping people focused on the true enemy?
So I saw this question, and I immediately, I believe within seconds, my tweet came out in reply. And I was like, hey, man, are you talking about like the Florida commune situation that you're hypothetically in? Or are you talking about the Minnesota Vikings? Or are you talking about like gestures vaguely and everything else, right? What are we dealing with here? And he said, oh, the Florida stuff. What do you mean? I was like, okay, yeah, sure, bud. So things I've learned from watching Zoran Mamdani absolutely take Andrew Cuomo to town, which like you don't have to care about whether his policies are good or bad to understand that he has been putting on a masterclass of styling on this guy, politically anyway, in the mayoral race in New York City. So, his ideas could be awful, he could be evil, but you have to at least understand that he's an effective political communicator. And the way he does it is he finds the issues that resonate with most people, and he is relentlessly, arduously, almost annoyingly on point and on message about that. He got asked about the Kendrick Drake beef. He's like, who do you think won? And he goes, well, Kendrick, obviously. And then immediately talks about affordability and living in New York. Immediately. Because he was like, Kendrick, obviously. And one of the ways that he won was that he stayed really on message. And I think that really resonates with people because it means that you're authentic. And that's why I keep on talking about affordability in New York. You're like, oh my God. Holy crap, dude. And like, you strip away kind of the newsreels about him and you take a look at his campaign messaging or the debates or whatever, right? And he is relentlessly on task, right? Like there's all this other stuff about him, like whether or not he supports this or that, whether or not he's going to arrest this guy or whatever. That's stuff that other people are asking him or other people are kind of putting out there. But you take a look at his like messaging, like his interviews, his debates, and he's insanely on message. And I think, Kyle, in your very hypothetical scenario, you need to find one or two, maybe three's pushing it, issues that the vast majority of this coalition that you've seemingly developed, this alliance that you have together, um, agree on. Problems that need to be solved, values that you all hold, ideally some mix of these things. A vision for the world, right? And that's kind of one of the things about having a core message. It's not just having an issue. It's having an issue that connects to a value and a value that connects to a vision. What do we want the city to look like? What values do we have that help us kind of realize this vision? What policies do we need to implement that align with those values, right? So just kind of like this nice pillar. And in your case, it seems to be survival. I don't know what the deal is right now, because it seems, I have difficulty following kind of everything that's going on here, but like B, I feel like you've moved between multiple factions, and this has gone poorly, right? Didn't it go poorly in our last update that he did that?
It did.
Okay, so I don't know kind of what group you're involved in right now, so I can't really give you, again, hypothetically, a really good example. But I would imagine, resource distribution is so core to a lot of people's kind of lived experience and their first experience relating to politics. And so probably is someone hoarding all the food? And if not, is someone hoarding all the medicine? If not, why don't you have access to the resources that you need? What is in the way? And how can we take care of each other? So that's the value. So these resources are in our way. How do we solve that problem? These resources we don't have access to. How do we solve that problem? That's the policy. The value is that we all take care of each other. We're in this together. And then the vision for that is a community of interdependence where we're free from, the types of people who would engage in resource deprivation, or the types of people who would be despotic. So, Kyle, I know you're a gifted communicator. That's the one thing everyone agrees you are. I think from there you can kind of move forward.
So, in case you don't have the game up right now, it is now going into the 13th inning. But they just showed a montage of fans of the Dodgers praying, and then the Dodgers flying out and getting and like being out. So now they have to go to the 13th inning. So you just watched a lot of people not get their prayers answered. And
it's beautiful in a way, I think.
Fox is absolutely on point tonight. Let's end with James Don Sharif, who asks, for Arif's Thruple Corner, Thruple analytics say the best way to win the Thruple playoffs is itching powder. What is the most effective use of itching powder in said scenario? Is there any other underrated device to use in said Thruple to win it, despite it not having the best value in the stat nerd community?
Okay, so this one does confuse me, if I'm being honest, because my understanding of the way that all of you, again, not me, that all of you have talked about winning relationships, and I guess in particular thruples, is by maliciously doing good deeds. Is by doing stuff that people agree needs to be done, tasks around the house that, if they're done, kind of improve people's quality of life, but doing them so that other people don't get to do them so that you get the points, right? Or I guess sometimes it's you bet on games, whatever. Like, what are the two, right? I don't really know how the itching, if someone is having a bad time, do they lose points? Because I don't think that's how that works. That's a new understanding of this to me. So, like, if someone has been pranked with itching powder, I'm really confused. The only way this kind of works out to me is if it's like negative campaigning, to continue with the political metaphor, negative campaigning, where you frame another person for having used itching powder, which I feel like I probably just wouldn't use itching powder. I feel like there's probably a million other things that would be more effective at that. But just generally speaking, it's probably really difficult to pull off a frame-up job in a 3-person situation. That feels needlessly difficult. So I think I'm probably going to be old school about this. Well, I'm going to be really old school first, because you're not trying to win a relationship. Don't win relationships. Relationships are about consensus building, mutual wins, if anything, and communication, and meeting each other where they're at, because you're building a future together, much like that community we were talking about. So it's not about winning, but in this world where one might consider the possibility that you can win in a relationship, which again is not true. You shouldn't think of relationships that way. I would be old school here and like do the equivalent of run the ball up the middle, which is do the chores around the house. I feel like that actually probably has the highest value. Doing the laundry before anyone else can, doing the dishes before anyone else can, taking out the trash before anyone else can, vacuuming, cleaning, all of that. Do that before anyone else can, and then you're like way ahead in the standings, I have to imagine. Also, like cheer for a team that's going to win, so that like on Sundays when this apparently comes up, like you get that boost in power rankings, I guess. That was part of it, right? Like I'm not misremembering that.
As far as I can tell, unless he's just referring to itching powder towards a different member of the thruple, I don't know.
But like, how would that change the rankings? Like, if you've been subject to itching powder, how does that change your rank? I don't understand, so I don't really get it.
No, it was funny. So I was talking in the Discord about how I'm not recording on Thursday night. Y'all can't make me, and people were trying to figure out, well, if you're not going to record about the Vikings game, let's figure out something else to record. And so somebody had suggested that you and I just watch Spaceballs instead and just record a watch along of Spaceballs. Which I was like, that's not the worst idea, but I don't want to ruin that movie by how angry I am right now. But somebody had said, episode 580, oops, all thruple questions all the way down, or all thruple questions.
That's incredible.
That's fantastic. With that is going to be the end of this episode of Norse Code. We hope you have enjoyed it. We will be back on Thursday to preview the Lions game without Carson Wentz at quarterback.
Muted, hooray, I guess. Jesus.
Yeah, what an experience. What an interesting, terrifying, and at times nauseating and infuriating roller coaster it was. So we will be back to preview the Lions game coming up on Sunday. Arif, what do you have to plug?
Why I left football, I just got a piece up. This is super interesting. So Kevin wrote a piece on the dynamic kickoff and what the different strategies teams are taking on it are, and how it might affect roster building and kind of the history of changes that have resulted in the dynamic kickoff and what it means for like NFL strategy. Like it affects your fourth down decision making too. Like there's a lot of kind of interrelated parts that I think are really cool that are discussed in this piece by Kevin. So that's over at Why I Left Out Football. I'm going to have a piece up really soon, maybe tomorrow, hopefully, about like, we don't learn much from a player's first two games, but when those first two games are so extreme, is it possible that we learn anything at all? So I go into the data to see if there's anything kind of like that in recent history, to discuss JJ McCarthy. That'll be coming out soon. I'm going to get a piece from Matt Fry soon, I believe, about the defense. A bunch of great stuff over at Why Left Out Football. So check that out. And then also we're putting out more regular episodes with 60-Minute Drill. And the next one is going to be so fun. We're doing all the weekly recaps, of course, but we've also got these kind of special deep dive episodes. I'm really excited about this next one.
Well, that's it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you have enjoyed it. For Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening. And please remember that the horrors persist. Just like this, ouch, that looked like it hurt. Just like this World Series game. And we will be back on Thursday. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of... and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or at my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merch. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
All things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.